This week on the Comic Box, Silver Surfer turns 200, we get a villain for the Batman standalone film, and Doctor Strange gets a little sense of community. Bop-a-doo, dap-a-doo, rap-bop-a-dap-bop-a-doon down, digga-down, bop-a-dap-bop-a-doon down, digga-dump-on comics. Hey everyone, and welcome to The Comic Box, part of the Geek to Geek podcast network. My name's Rob, your friendly neighborhood comic geek, and as always, we have a lot of stuff to go through, so let's crack open that comic box and jump straight into some comic book news. We're going to start over at Marvel, where they are continually teasing this MU thing. And that's it. That's literally what we know. It's moo. Basically, a series of teases have been released where you get two names of creators, a writer and an artist, above the letters MU. And that's it. There is going to supposedly be an announcement on the evening of September 1st, but this is recorded on August 31st. So I'm not going to know until tomorrow, but this was my time to record. So we will cover whatever the heck Moo is next week. Or you can go online. I mean, I want to be your source of comic book news, but certainly I shouldn't be the source of all your comic book news. Just your most handsomely voiced comic book news. Sticking with Marvel Comics, SpiderMan spoilers here, so spoilers, 3, 2, and 1. Electro is dead in the comics. I mean, we can't expect everybody to remain dead forever, and he's a classic Spider-Man villain, but for now, in the comic books, he had been depowered and put into prison, then brought out of prison by the Jackal, who is the jerk responsible for the Clone Saga. So he's back, and he's gathering a bunch of villains to him by reviving their loved ones and then saying that they'll die again if they don't take some special pill every day. Point being, the Jackal brings in Electro and convinces him to get his powers back, to go through the process again that gave him his powers. Unfortunately, it wasn't working, and so the person the Jackal resurrected to get him to do this process, who is a former love, I guess, of Electro, gets the powers instead. So Electro dies, but now we have a female Electro, who then goes on to, spoilers, I guess less so because most people aren't familiar with this character, she goes on to kill Hobie Brown, the Prowler. But then the Jackal brings the Prowler back to life, tells him that he needs to take this pill every day in order to live, and recruits him as well. So plot warning for Spider-Man fans. I don't currently keep up with the Spider-Man series. I'm kind of sad to know that the Jackal is back because that's just, it's like the Time Turner in Harry Potter. You know that if it shows up, you're about to get a plot you may or may not actually want to read. But yay, hooray, yet another villain. This isn't really something new. I remember in the 90s during the original Clone Saga that we got a female version of Dr. Octopus who was, I want to say, the daughter of Dr. Octopus. So this isn't really a new thing for us to get a younger female version of older male villains, or heroes for that matter, really. But hey, if you were an Electro fan, my sympathies. Move over to Marvel movie news, which I have a lot of, so I'll go through all this as fast as I can here. First of all, if you go on YouTube, I'm not going to give you guys links for this just because there's a whole bunch of different stuff, but there's a bunch of videos floating out there for Civil War advertising the movie coming out on digital HD on September 2nd and on Blu-ray September 13th. So there's a gag reel, there are deleted scenes, and then totally unrelated, there's also what looks like the first part of a featurette on the supporting cast of Doctor Strange. So check those out, though. But switching back to Civil War there, one of the deleted scenes from Civil War has Cap drop his shield while they're all fighting at the airport. I guess spoilers? If you haven't seen Civil War by now, put me down, turn me off, go watch the movie. It's a great movie, then come back. So during that battle, Cap is fighting against War Machine, drops his shield, which is then picked up by Bucky, who throws it, bounces off of War Machine, is grabbed by Falcon, who then tosses it back to Cap. If you are a fan of the comics or know anything sort of about the history of all the people who have carried Captain America's shield, it's kind of just a fun little moment because it goes from Steve Rogers to Bucky to Falcon, which is sort of the way that it's gone in the comic books with Falcon currently carrying the Captain America shield. And then even bigger is then when Cap gets the shield back, Bucky looks at him and says, I gotta get me one of those, which is, again, if you're a fan, it could be real foreshadowing or it could just be sort of a tip of the hat, like in the first Iron Man, when Rhodey looked at the suit and was like, next time, baby. You know, we didn't necessarily know that they were going to get another movie or that War Machine would be in that movie. So this might have been just one of those sort of things. Or it could be that perhaps we will actually see somebody else carry the shield in the Avengers Infinity War movie and whatever they're going to call the second one, which seems reinforced by an interview that the Russo brothers did, that is the writer-director team behind the Captain America movies and then the upcoming Avengers Infinity War film, who said that Captain America has pretty much, when he dropped the shield at the end of Civil War and walked away, basically abandoned the identity of Captain America. Obviously, the one big thing that means is more costumes, meaning more toys and merchandise for the character in Infinity War, but that means that we could see somebody else pick up that shield. And what I want to know is who you guys think it's going to get, because both Falcon and Bucky were on Captain America's team, not Iron Man's. So who on would he carry it himself? Would he just keep it in a case somewhere, or would he actually give it to somebody that was on his team? I want to know what you think. Hit me up on Twitter. You can find a link to my Twitter or whatever at the end of the show and in the show notes. Another cool thing, supposedly cut from the film, I don't know if this was in the same interview, but the Russo brothers also said that some of the things they were considering for Civil War that just never happened was including the Wasp, including the Iron Spider suit for SpiderMan, and seeing General Ross transform into the Red Hulk, who is like the Hulk, but red. Yeah. Moving back to Doctor Strange, I totally could have put that piece of news elsewhere, but whatever. Apparently, after principal photography on Doctor Strange wrapped, rewrites happened, which isn't unusual in any film of this sort of size and caliber. But these rewrites included Community creator and Rick and Morty co-creator Dan Harmon. I'm assuming that he was brought in to add more levity to the film. In either case, he came in to write additional scenes which will reportedly be shot during the standard round of reshoots that always sort of happens after principal photography. That's just sort of the filming process. But if you're a Dan Harmon fan, hey, he is working on Doctor Strange. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Let's talk Guardians for a little bit. We now know that the film is going to take place 2 months after the first one, but that doesn't really tell us how that links up with the other Marvel films as far as the timeline. It's always kind of been separate from the other movies, outside of the fact that we know that Thanos is in there, and we assume that it takes place after the first Avengers film, which I believe is the last time we see Thanos. I think. I'm trying to remember if he shows up in the Thor, hot tub scene in Avengers 2. And I honestly don't remember. But either way, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 will take place 2 months after the first Guardians of the Galaxy. And the other little tidbit that we've learned recently is that we are going to see several new costumes in Guardians 2, which, obviously, because toys and merchandise. It doesn't make sense that these people who are stuck in space on a spaceship with just like 5 of them and no supplies, why wouldn't they each have a bunch of different suits that they can wear, a bunch of different costumes or outfits, I guess, that they could wear? However, the upside on this is that the costume designer from the last 2 Captain America movies is the one that's on board for Guardians 2, and that makes me okay, because I think she has done a really, really good job with everybody's costumes in those movies. So, no complaints from me outside of the usual, I know why you have to do this, so I'm going to live with it. So at the very least, you got somebody that's going to do a good job. Last bit of Marvel movie news is that the New Mutants movie is still being written, but now the screenplay has been handed over to the guys who wrote The Fault in Our Stars. I'm assuming so it can get sort of that YA or young adult feel. I never saw The Fault in Our Stars, so I have no idea if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But hey, if you're out there and you're a fan of that movie, the people who worked on that screenplay are now doing, I think, hopefully a final polish to the New Mutants script. Speaking of the X-Men universe, I just have one piece of Marvel TV news, which is that there have been rumors that the XMen Legion television show might actually become canon and sync up with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Partly because the director of the Doctor Strange film says that his film is the start of the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse, meaning multiple universes, meaning that they might be able to, I guess, open a door into other possible universes, which would then include, say, for example, the X-Men universe or the Fantastic Four universe. As far as we know, that isn't the case, though. One of the Russo brothers says that, as far as he is aware, there's no discussion of having the X-Men at all in the Avengers Infinity War movie, which is probably best because it's just going to get way, way too cluttered. And we already know that this final Wolverine film, I think, is supposed to be Hugh Jackman's last as Wolverine. So if they brought in a Wolverine, it would, be a different actor, and people would be like, why isn't it the last actor? Because it's all supposed to be one shared universe. I know my buddy, some guy named Matt, who was saying that, where he wanted Christian Bale to always play Batman forever and ever. He would be upset. So I'm sure there's other fans who would be upset about that thing as well. But in either case, maybe that's what this Doctor Strange movie is going to do, is at least open the door for these other companies to start making deals with Disney and Marvel the same way that Sony did with the Spider-Man character. DC Comics, Detective Comics. Let's jump straight into some DC movie news. Ben Affleck took to Twitter this week to upload a very short video, which was like a video of someone in a Deathstroke costume, who you might know from the Arrow television show, or I think he's just known as Slade in the Teen Titans cartoon. Dude's got one eye, orange on half of the mask and black on the other. And for those who like trivia, was the basis for the Deadpool character, because you have Slade Wilson, and then Marvel went and made Wade Wilson, who is the hyper-violent assassin character, who had guns and swords and everything else. The theory here is that this footage comes from the set of Justice League, because the Batman solo film hasn't started shooting yet. Affleck says that there is a script, but he's not happy with it yet, so they're, as far as I'm aware, not shooting yet. However, it is also being reported that Deathstroke will be the villain for the Batman solo film, which just gives us so much to talk about in terms of choice, because it is far from an iconic Batman villain. In all the other Batman movies, we've seen, the Joker, the Penguin, Bane, the Two-Face, the Riddler, Ra's al Ghul. In general, we're getting characters that people might... I suppose Ra's al Ghul is a little bit more obscure, but anybody from the cartoons certainly knows who the character is, and very much in the comics, it's one of those big Batman villains. Deathstroke, really not so much. He's always kind of been a Teen Titans villain, or just his own villain, out there in the DC universe. So picking him up as a villain for Batman, I think, is really interesting. If nothing else, because he's also sort of a martial artist kind of guy with lots, of tricks in his bag, if you will, and isn't necessarily a metahuman. I'm going to do my best to remember this. I want to say he was given a serum or something that enhanced his reflexes and his mental processing speed or something. So he's incredibly intelligent and then can think and react faster than normal people and is stronger than normal people. So maybe kind of like a Captain America level as far as strength, where he is extra strong. But I don't know if we'll see him do any of those sweet bicep curls while grabbing helicopters and then switching his grip just so you can see his biceps even more. Oh yeah, Captain America. Yeah. Anyway, good for DC, or good for Ben Affleck, or good for whoever made that choice, because I really dig it. I like the idea of picking a villain that's not a typical Batman villain, somebody they can develop that is known to audiences, but not so much that they're going to be very beholden to a strict interpretation of that character. Next up, David Ayer, director of Suicide Squad, also on Twitter, said that the film has surpassed $6 million worldwide. So whether you loved it or hated it, there's a pretty good chance that another one of them or something like it is going to be on the way. Obviously, I don't think there's any word of that, and if there was, I didn't see it. If there's already a Suicide Squad 2 slated or something like that. If they do, I'm sure I can do an entire 4 podcasts on the things they can fix from the first one in order to make a successful second one. So maybe if that officially gets announced, unless it did and I missed it, in which case, whatever. Let's move on to other movie news in the DC Universe. Flash! Rumor has it that the Flash solo film will not feature a single villain, but the team of villains known as the Rogues. In the comics, this team varies, but generally it includes Captain Cold, Heatwave, Mirror Master, Weather Wizard, the Trickster, and Captain Boomerang, who we actually saw, spoilers, captured by the Flash at the beginning of the Suicide Squad film. So there's already almost sort of a hint there of why Captain Boomerang would want revenge. I read something online saying that his character was originally much meaner, saying like racist things and sexist things. And then during rewrites or however, editing, whatever ended up on the cutting room floor, he became, as some guy named Matt called him. I love that I call him that. Like he's just Matt. I just wanted to give him a nickname because just calling him Matt seemed boring. So I call him some guy named Matt. But as he referred to him was the Gimli, the comic relief. So apparently he was going to be a much harsher character in that film. So hopefully if he shows up in the Flash movie, we'll get a more harsh version. But not too much. Like, the Flash movie is going to need to be fun, so the villains can't be that dark, I don't think. Because then you're dealing with, like, dark humor, and I don't know that that's really where the Flash should live. Hey, kids, remember that 66 Batman cartoon I mentioned from last episode, Return of the Caped Crusaders? Well, they have announced that their world premiere of it will be at New York Comic Con this year, which is going to be taking place on Thursday, October 6th. So if you're headed to New York Comic Con and you see it, be sure to hit me up. Let me know what you guys think. I'm not even going to say I'm middle of the road on this one. I don't expect it to be very good, but I've been wrong in the past. I didn't think Batman the Brave and the Bold was going to be great because it seemed too campy, and I ended up really enjoying that series. So maybe this Batman Return of the Caped Crusaders will this film be amazing? Will the fans rush out to buy it in the stores? Find out in October, I guess, when it comes out. I don't know if I can say the Bat Time, Bat Channel thing. I might get sued. I mean, granted, I don't have the listenership. I don't assume somebody out there with, lawyer powers are doing it. And those of you listening had better not turn me in. I don't know. Did that count, just mentioning it? I mean, I hope not. Oh, no. Oh, no. I'm going to be okay with it. Let's move on. Rolling Stone Brazil released a photo from a deleted scene in Suicide Squad that appears to show the Joker berating Harley. He's sort of sticking, if I remember the image here, he's sort of sticking his finger in her face and looks like he's sort of yelling at her or at least, scolding her, which has led folks to assume that, as we heard from Jared Leto, there was a lot of Joker left on the cutting room floor, and we may originally have had a version that showed a more comic book accurate version of the relationship between the Joker and Harley Quinn, where the short version is the Joker is not very nice. He is not a good a boyfriend. He is not a good puddin'. Not a good puddin'. Anyway, there's a link to that image in the show notes. DC TV. Supergirl is introducing Metallo this season. I'm trying to think if they did Metallo on Smallville, and I want to say they did. Otherwise, if I remember correctly, there was a really good episode of the Superman cartoon. I believe it was Superman and not the Justice League. That was a really almost touching story about Metallo. The short version is it is a human brain stuck in a robot's body, and the power source is kryptonite. So think RoboCop versus Superman, except instead of baby food, RoboCop is powered by the thing that can kill Superman. Unless it's kryptonite-laced baby food. Which, I mean, genius, right? Like, Lex Luthor, I hope you're taking notes. We also have a behind-the-scenes photo from this season of The Flash, which does show our Flash, Barry Allen, alongside Wally West as... I'm not going to call it Kid Flash. It's totally the Kid Flash costume, but it seems with this Flashpoint thing, and spoilers, Barry going back in time to rescue his mom and changing all of reality, it seems like Wally West is now the Flash in reality as we know it, or this particular timeline that Barry is stuck in now. It's pretty cool because, we get to see a Kid Flash team up, which, considering how young the actors are, I suppose we never really assumed that we would get. So link to that also in the show notes. Indie comics and movies and whatever. Things that aren't from the big two. All those changes that we see in the Walking Dead TV show versus the comics, well, apparently most of those actually come from creator Robert Kirkman. Showrunner Scott Gimple did an interview where he said that the show kind of serves as a remix of the comic, and that he always tries to stick to the book as much as possible whenever he's given the chance to deviate. He's like, nope, we're going to stick to the comics. But then Kirkman comes in and he says, no. He wants to give the readers of the comic book a new experience when watching the show. So that's why we've had sort of deaths of characters almost swapped. We've had characters die before their time in the comics, characters live longer than their time in the comics, and then, of course, original characters like Daryl. Here's something really cool. It's far out, so normally I don't like to throw news out there if something is coming way down the pipeline. But Dark Horse Comics is going to take 8 recent #1 issues, and they're going to put them into a single trade paperback that you can pick up for only $6. So it's 8 #1s for $6. So if you're the sort of person who's never really sure, you want to try a new book, but you don't know what to try, and you don't want to go out spending, $4 or $5, on a single issue, this is a cheap way that you can do this. Unfortunately, it's not coming out until March of 2017, so it's going to be a while, but I was just so excited because what a great idea for the ability to people to try it. I've seen Marvel do it as well. Well, they put, I think it was Captain Marvel #1, Miss Marvel #1, maybe Spider-Woman #1, and I don't remember, I think there was a 4th one, or maybe there were 5, where they took female-led Marvel books, and they put them together in a trade. So again, a reader could pick it up and be like, I want to read something that has a female lead in it, but I don't know what it is that I want to read. And so I hope more of this happens because it's a much more accessible way. This is literally going to be called Dark Horse #1s, and it's going to include, for the 8 stories, I'm going to go through sort of the plots as fast as I can. The first is Umbrella Academy, which is basically superpowered kids who are all born on the same day, and then later they're adopted by the same person, the same man. There is Hellboy in Hell, which is just exactly what it sounds like, Hellboy who has died and now is in hell. Lady Killer, which is about a 1960s homemaker who is also an assassin for hire. Black Hammer, which is about superheroes who have been banished and trapped in a small town. Department H, which is the story of a special investigator looking into the possible sabotage of a deep-sea research station. Briggsland, which is about a family leading a secessionist movement in the United States. For those who don't know what that means, it's people who want to break away from the U.S. within the U.S. Bounty, which is about galactic bandits who turn bounty hunters. And finally, Harrow County, which is about a young girl who discovers that she has supernatural powers. That's the rundown. I know I did that really fast, but I just know that listing off things can get pretty boring. But keep an eye out, March 2017. And like I said, Marvel has one of these, and they're just a really, really good option. So head to your local comic book store or hop online and see if you can find one of these collections of #1s, because it's a nice, affordable way to find yourself a new series to read. Image Comics is reportedly moving to Portland, Oregon. Oregon. We say Oregon in Minnesota because we played Oregon Trail as children. I know it's properly pronounced Oregon, so I hope I don't offend anybody in the Pacific Northwest. Point being, they have not commented on this story, but the rumor mill is going pretty strong here. Image is currently located in Berkeley, California, where it's pretty expensive to operate, but Eric Larson, who created Savage Dragon and is the former publisher for Image Comics, lived near Berkeley, so it made sense for them to be over there. But Portland is quickly becoming sort of this new comic book hangout. It's already the headquarters for Dark Horse Comics, Oni Press, and the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund, and then creators Kelly Sue DeConnick, who has done a lot of stuff. I think most specifically, or maybe most recognized, was the run on Captain Marvel that introduced Carol Danvers, the female Captain Marvel, and then Matt Fraction, who I enjoyed for his really good run on Hawkeye. But in either case, both of those are creators for Image right now. They have books over at Image. So as two of the bigger names there, it kind of makes sense for some of these more independent comic book publishers to make their way up to Oregon. Speaking of Image, Deadpool co-creator and guy who is often heckled online or becomes the butt of many jokes online and is often held responsible for the massive influx of pouches in the early 90s, Rob Liefeld is bringing back his creator-owned series Youngblood. They are getting all new costumes and character designs. I have a link in the show notes. You can check those out if you were a Youngblood fan. It really just looked like X-Force and everything else. Everyone had really big muscles and gritted their teeth a lot, But you can check out the link in the show notes. Cool fact, though, the artist for this book, Jim Toe, was found by Liefeld on Twitter. the artist had sort of redesigned the team just kind of as an exercise, as a lot of artists do, is sort of share their own interpretations of characters' costumes. And then when he posted them on Twitter, he tagged Layfield. I keep pronouncing his name differently. I'm just going to stick with Layfield, Pouch Guy. I don't want to be mean. I don't. But Pouchy McPoucherson. Anyway, he tagged Layfield in the tweet, and that led to him actually getting the job on the book. So the lesson here is, if you're an artist, if you like redesigning costumes and stuff, keep putting your stuff out there, because you never know who's watching. Final piece of news, which is both from Marvel and DC, so I just kind of stuck it back here. And this is, I admit, kind of a stupid story, but Fun.com, which sells costumes and accessories or whatever, has a specialty line of suits that feature either superhero-inspired linings, so the interior of the suit, which they're calling, I didn't write this down. One is called like Alter Ego, and maybe the other is Secret Identity or something like that. So we'll call it their Secret Identity ones, or there's ones that I guess are the Alter Ego, and it's just flat out, I don't know if it's screen printed or whatever, but the costume design is just flat out on the outside. So there's like an Iron Man suit, a Batman, and a Superman, and they look freaking ridiculous. Like, I guess if you're an ultra nerd and you're getting married or something and you don't mind dropping the $250, $350 or whatever it is for these suits, but honestly, almost all of them are pretty terrible. There are a couple saving grace kind of ones. There's a Joker suit that includes the full, pants, shirt, vest, tie, jacket, suit, and then the purple overcoat. And then there's a Riddler one, which is just the full green suit with the question marks all over it. And those aren't bad. And then there is one Marvel one that just has Marvel comic strip sort of motley design on the lining of the suit, which itself is kind of neat. But really beyond those, they're pretty terrible. Like, I'm a comic book fan. I would love a suit that has a cool comic book lining or something on the inside, but none of these really. We're going to give them an A for effort and a C- for execution. So the link is in the show notes so you guys can check it out. I'm just going to say this is what happens when you give comic book things to non-comic book fans who try to figure out what a comic book fan would want. And it's like, yes, we want a bat suit, but we don't want an actual suit that has like a weird screen printing of the Batman outfit on it, because that looks silly. That looks weird. So I'm sure there's somebody out there that owns one and loves it, but, take that versus like the motorcycle suits that actually look like the bat suits. Like, if somebody's going to drop hundreds and hundreds of dollars on something, then I guess the motorcycle suit is more important, or is more expensive. But this is not important, is what I was saying. Can we just move on? Can we move on? The link is in the show notes. Go look at the ridiculous suits. Honestly, the Joker one might almost be worth it. It's only $350 if you get the whole thing plus the overcoat. Like, I've seen the overcoat for $350. This is also quarter length and versus the full length overcoat, which really, if you're doing the Dark Knight thing, I'm getting way off topic. Let's just say a reviews. I just needed to get away from that. I was just going to keep going on that suit thing. Let's talk comic reviews for the week. First up is Silver Surfer number 6, celebrating 200 issues of the Sentinel of the Spaceways. You guys, this was a really, really good read. Just a really good single-issue story comic book. Like, I'm almost tempted to call it one of the best or the best single-issue story I've read this year. But keep in mind, I have a very short memory, and most comics are done in larger arcs, so it's really tough to call the single issues. But, like, as far as a one-and-done story, and obviously there's some lingering things, for later, but in general, it's kind of this one-and-done story. We pick up right where the last one left off, where the Surfer has brought Dawn to visit her long-lost mother, who left the family when she was very young. And so there's the big misunderstanding of, I told you I had never met my mom. That doesn't mean you were supposed to track her down. And then they get into this ridiculous thing where they're fighting a creature that takes the shape of your fears, and SpiderMan shows up And it's just a great read. Like, the way the interactions are written between Spider-Man and Silver Surfer is great. So we have this lighthearted, fun stuff going on. And meanwhile, we're having a little more heavy story going on between Dawn and her mother. So Dan Slott, Michael Allred are just doing an amazing job. They're killing it on this book. This is just a great series. And really, if you want to know what this series is like, you can pick up this latest issue, Silver Surfer number 6. Make sure it's of this current volume. It'll have the big 200 on the cover. Pick up this particular issue, and it is a microcosm of sort of everything fun about this book. So pick it up. You will not be disappointed. Next up is Saga number 37. Again, a very interesting, albeit this one a more complex book, and very adult. I'm just going to say this before I even get into it. Like, there is a single panel in this book. We'll call it unlike a panel I have seen in any other book. It's just full-on, full-frontal male nudity. It is not a book for children, but it's still an enjoyable read for what it is. Well, not even for what it is. It's a good read. Saga is good. If you're an adult and you can handle very adult stuff and that sort of adult content, feel free. Read from the beginning, of course. This issue or plot is just kind of moving along. It feels like it's just setting up for things to come. Very much kind of like The Walking Dead does a lot now. Instead of just going action, 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 it's we're going to take our time and set up. So long as it's an interesting read, I'm usually okay with that. I do like the one and dones, or I like the very short arcs, but I'm willing to have a couple books that have these longer storylines, and this is one of the ones I'm willing to follow. I do kind of feel like I'm lost sometimes because I can't quite remember what happened in the most recent couple of issues. It is one where I feel like at some point I'm going to have to go back and reread everything, or, maybe it's smarter to switch over to trades. I hate to continue saying that because I love getting comics every week and every month, but I have been personally having issues trying to sort of keep everything straight as I'm reading things month to month. It's the reason that I can't do Lazarus month to month. There was a new issue of that out. It looked really good, so I'm sure the book is going to continue to be awesome, but I have to wait for a trade. I had mentioned last week that I might review it. I'm not. I'm going to wait for the next trade because I just kind of have to with a story of that level of complexity. Finally, for reviews, I finished reading the first volume of 100 Bullets, which included the first 19 issues of that book by Brian Azzarello. I really enjoyed it. I mean, you can tell that there is a much more intricate story going right beneath the surface, but what we're getting is sort of the level stuff of these short stories that are kind of interconnected. I talked about this last week. The quick version of the plot is something terrible has happened to you, and a man shows up with a briefcase that has proof of who is responsible, a gun, and 100 untraceable bullets, and the rest of the choice is up to you. And so it's interesting to see the different choices people make, how that affects their lives, what it means that there are multiple people that have been handed these briefcases, these attachés, as they say. I suggest it. I picked it up via the Hoopla app. I'm super pumped because tomorrow my month resets and I get to check out 5 more titles. I'm not sure quite what I'm going to get next, but I'll get to that later because that's pull list stuff, which I suppose we can get into right now with the shibba-da-boop-a-doom-ba-doom-down ba-da-ba-ba-da-bow. Da-da-da-ba-doo-bow, yeah. Ba-da-ba-doo-bow, wow-wow-wow-wow-doom-down-ba-doom, pull list. Here's what I got for next week, you guys. Paper Girls number 9, Walking Dead 158, Doctor Strange number 11, which will be the start of the second arc of that book, Moon Knight number 6, which will also be kicking off the second arc, or maybe that'll be the third arc of Doctor Strange. If it's issue 11, there is probably a first one. Either way, new arcs for each of those books. And then, as I was saying, whatever I find on Hoopla, I might see if they have the first volume of Invincible, because I know that series is coming to an end, so I can kind of start binging it. Or Fables was suggested to me by Joe over at the Geektitude podcast. So if they have that, I might give that a shot. I don't know. I'm gonna see if I can't find something new, because that's the whole point. Now let's talk archives. So for the archives, the other thing that I had mentioned last week that I had picked up at my comic shop was Volume 1 of Black Magick. That is Magick, Magick. Because I'm a huge Greg Rucka nerd, and it is an Image book, and so the first volume of a book from Image is always $10, so it's nice and affordable, a way to try the first volume of something new. And man, I don't know how he keeps finding such amazing artists, but Nicholas Scott, does the art on this, and really, the story is good, but the art totally steals the show in this book. It's all in black and white. It has almost a watercolor feel as far as the shading in the book. So I don't know if that means that it's digitally. It's not colored because it's black and white, but I hope you guys understand what I mean as far as the shading within the drawing. It doesn't have the feel of pencil lines. But anyway, the whole book is in black and white except magic or magical items or magical happenings, and those are done in beautiful color. So it's a black and white read, and then there's fire, and it is incredibly vivid, and that effect that it has on you as a reader of this is something different, this is something important, is really, really cool. Like, it's not a ham-fisted thing where, like, this is glowing bright red because this is magic. Like, it's done very well. The general plot for the story is it's about a police Detective Rowan Black, who is also a witch, like a proper witch who can do proper magic and is part of a coven. And then we find out, I believe, that somebody is hunting witches, or that's what they're afraid of, is that somebody is coming after them who can do even more powerful magic than they can. That's it. Simple plot, amazing art. Go read. Go do it. Topic of the week. Yeah! My topic of the week for this week is stuff. I just bought a Captain America shield. It just arrived in the mail today. It's awesome. It is the Marvel Legends. It's like they're making items strictly, I feel, for cosplayers, sort of. So they made a Captain America shield and then an Iron Man helmet where the faceplate could be removed, or I think maybe it flips up or something like that. There are two different versions of the shield. I got the plastic one because it was cheaper and it was enough money as is. But you could also get a 75th anniversary Captain America metal shield, which was really like $300 or $350 or something. It was pretty spendy, so too much for me. But I've always wanted a Captain America shield to hang on my wall. It was kind of one of those childhood bucket list things for me. And so the point I wanted to make is that if you're an adult nerd like me, an adult geek, take this time to really appreciate the stuff that's out there. Even if you're like, well, my wife, my husband, won't let me have this stuff sitting in the living room or whatever, at the very least know that for the next generation, because we always had, like when we were kids growing up, our Halloween costumes, if you had a Captain America costume, you would probably have to paint a Captain America shield on a piece of cardboard, and then you would get this plastic, like, onesie that would tie in the back, and you would get this thin plastic mask with eye holes, and then it would have the face, beneath the mask, so like the chin and the mouth and the nose, with this just little slit for you to breathe through. And then this very thin elastic string, band that would go around the back. So every part of this mask would cut into your face. And so you would very much suffer just for the ability to appear like this character. Oh, and by the way, the jerkin that you wore did not actually have Captain America's costume on it. No. It had a picture of Captain America and then said Captain America on it. Your Captain America costume had a picture of Captain America, the name Captain America, and then the world's most uncomfortable mask digging into your face. And you carried around your cardboard Captain America shield. Now, I'm not saying there isn't joy to be had and there is not pride to be had in creating your own cardboard props as a child, but there's something to be said for looking at that, and then as those kids are now adults making products and knowing what they had growing up, are like, no, we're going to have screen printed, like movie accurate costumes. You can get ones with muscles in them. You can get ones that don't. You can get a full body SpiderMan costume. That's like the full spandex thing, if you can pull off that kind of thing. You can get screen accurate props like this. This is obviously the adult size, but you can get the kid size Captain America shields. You can get screen accurate Thor hammer for like $10, something like that, $15. Like, we're really living sort of in a golden age as far as kids' ability to dress up for Halloween or to go to a convention, and the fact that a convention is no longer just you wearing your least stained Green Lantern t-shirt, but people are going in full costume that they spend hours working on. So my topic of the week is stuff, because I think we are just living in such a cool time that these things exist. For me personally, knocking off items on my childhood bucket list is I now have a full-sized Captain America shield that will hang on the wall in it's our storage room, which is also my nerd room. If you see the picture, you can see the picture of me wielding the shield on Twitter, and you'll see the shelf behind me that has some action figures and stuff. And then the opposite wall is a shelf with my comics and then, normal storage stuff and things, normal basement things. But I'll be able to hang a shield. I have a Thor hammer. I have a Green Lantern battery that was actually, it's actually a bank that I got pretty cheap, a plastic bank. And then I have all of the different Green Lantern Corps rings that I got for like $1 each at my local collectibles store. I even have this pretty terrible Batarang like pool toy that I got at Walgreens for like $6, which is actually kind of sort of fun to throw, and I almost got it to come back to me a couple of times. I do not suggest it as an actual boomerang, but like, I just thinking about that, like all of these cool props that I have that are sitting on my shelf, that are sitting in there. I'm not a statue guy. I just can't afford it. I know people that buy every new statue of a certain character when it comes out. I can't keep up. Those are way too expensive for me. But every once in a while, I can spend, $15 for a Green Lantern battery kind of thing. But how cool is that we actually have these things that are available to us? Every time we feel upset or we're angry that the movies aren't exactly what we want, I just want you to poke around a little bit online. Take a look at some pictures of things you can get at a store, not just the amazing cosplay out there, but things you can just go and buy at a Halloween Express or whatever, a Walmart. And just be appreciative. It's kind of a nice way to reset the geek rage and be like, we are actually living in a really cool time when not only are we seeing a Captain Boomerang live action, character in a movie, but depending on how, I guess, the Halloween costumes go, you're going to be able to buy a Captain Boomerang costume, like from a store, like a mass-produced Captain Boomerang costume. We're living in a golden age, guys. We really are. So that's my topic of the week, is just be grateful, sit back and smile, and just think of how cool of an age we live in. Do 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 da ba do ya ba 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 do da world da ba ba do da da do da ba do wow wow. And that is it for us. By us, I guess I mean me and you, dear listener, for this week's Comic Box. As always, please. Star ratings and reviews on iTunes are awesome. I very much love reading them, seeing what people think of the show, even if it's not great, which, why wouldn't it be? Leave me a star rating and review. If you have a suggestion for the archives or something that I should add to my poll list, hit me up. I'm on Twitter, @Knowby, that is @KNOWBY. You can also go and check out the picture that I took of me with my new Captain America shield, which is pretty sweet. You can also email me at thecomicboxpodcast@gmail.com. And finally, don't forget, this is part of the Geek to Geek Podcast Network, so head over to geektogeekcast.net to sign up for updates on all of our great Geek to Geek podcast shows. And that's it. We're going to close the Comic Box. I hope you guys had a good time listening, and I will see you guys next week where we will find out what the heck Moo is. Right? Moo. Bum, ba, 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 bum. Comic Box episodes done, lots of news, couple cool stuff. I got a shield, gonna go and see if I can find a Red Skull. I can throw a shield at him. I throw my mighty shield. A chicka chicka. I wonder if my wife's going to get upset when she gets up in the middle of the night and realizes that I have the shield right next to the bed. Because you don't know. Intruders happen. And when they do, I'm going to be ready.